Hello, hello. We get everybody going here. How's it going? You hear me okay? Excellent, excellent. We're still waiting for a few people to arrive. But we are going to get started here. Looks like we may have a couple of technical issues. Trouble streaming to Instagram, but we are live. So welcome to Alternative Healthcare Solutions. I am your host, Jamie Lee, and I am so honored to be here. This is an exciting new way of really engaging with our audience, engaging with people who are in need and really wanting to learn more about healing from toxic relationships. So I am excited to have everybody here. It's been a long in the works progress between, the backstages. We've been putting this together and really working on something exciting for you all. We know that this right now is, it is actually, if you're not familiar, but this is Mental Health Awareness Month. So the month of May is all about the mental health awareness, and it is, an exciting times to be able to be in a space where we can really reach a lot of people and start helping a lot of people recovering from those toxic relationships. So, toxic relationships, the reason why this is so important to us is because when we are not aware of how external relationships affect the internal, then that's where we start to see these chronic conditions. That is when our nervous system is upset and we begin to really start to see all sorts of problems with autoimmune diseases, with anxiety, with depression, and really, it's one of those things that comes on subtle with a toxic relationship. And I want you to think of it like, if someone were to be daily poisoning you and just little bitty drips of poison, and it's not something that just comes on you and kills you immediately, it is a slow progression of poison. And over time, you begin to be very sick. And so that is a lot of what happens with our toxic relationships. We get into these relationships not knowing, we're blinded to, the toxicity that we're stepping into. And really, we begin to not see the things that are happening in our relationship and in our own health. And we're just kind of going, what's going on with me? Like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I going through these things? So that's why it's so important for us to really bring awareness to toxic relationships and really point out for the month of May, just bringing that awareness of your own mental health and how that can affect your entire life, every area of your life, your relationships with your children, your work environment. And as you'll see today, as we've had these questions come up, it really affects who we are. And it's very troubling to go through a toxic relationship. And I tell you, I know we've been polling the audience for a couple weeks now, and just some of the questions that have come through in this space has been very sorry, I'm going to mute you guys, but it's been very alarming to see how people are stuck. They are not sure how to get out of these toxic relationships, or they are, committed to a toxic relationship because of a child that they've had together. So really, this is about healing. This is about recovery. We know the trauma that toxic relationships can be, and we don't need to rehash our own problems that we've gone through. What we're here today is to offer support. We're here to offer help. We're here to offer healing and encouragement, and to really support you on your journey through this process. So welcome again. I am Jamie, your host. of Alternative Healthcare Solutions. I'm the founder and visionary of this amazing organization that really, it could not be possible to have this organization without these phenomenal practitioners that we have gathered together. So these individuals that are going to be speaking to you today, they have had their own story of transformation, their own story of going through toxic relationships or going through some sort of traumatic experience that their bodies had to heal from. And so this is that collective. And unfortunately, we had Dr. Jamie Heisman that was supposed to be in here today, but so unfortunate, he had a death in the family and he is not able to attend. However, if you put together questions for Dr. Jamie, and you are hoping to get an answer for him, he is available for you to email your questions directly to him. And I'll get that information sent out to you today about how to reach him. But also, if you would like to actually engage in that conversation with him, we have an event coming up on the 31st that we will talk about here in a little bit. But on the 31st, he is willing to answer all of those questions for you. It'll be a fantastic event with several practitioners that are going to be, and clinicians that are going to be talking on, toxic relationships. So don't miss that event, but we'll talk more about that later. But anyways, I think that's all I wanted to share on this slide. And just kind of bring our collective here. So welcome. I'm going to go ahead and let each one of our practitioners introduce themselves. They can always do it better than I can, but they are phenomenal, and I am so honored to be holding this space for each one of you. So I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Carrie. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Carrie Paglarini, and I am a certified holistic health coach, and I specialize in sugar addiction. I'm so excited that we're talking about this today because people have such unhealthy relationships with food, especially sugar, and it all goes back to emotions, setting boundaries, all the things besides food. So I'm so glad that we are going to talk about that today. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome. And Jody.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jody Solberg. I am a registered and certified master hypnotherapist, and I have been a trauma-focused therapist for 25 years now, working with adults as well as families that were dealing with crisis such as abuse. So I help people to move through and heal from things like trauma, anxiety, and burnout. Specifically, I work with a lot of people dealing with toxic relationships and making sure they can help themselves get whole and healthy coming out of toxic relationships, and then not find themselves back in those toxic relationships in the future. And I completely agree with Carrie that, yes, there are so many different types of toxic relationships with people, with food, with substances, and a lot of times that can be a result from different forms of trauma. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. I think it's very powerful and important. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're so glad you're here. All right, Vashad.
Afternoon all. I'm the Mindset Transformer with my brand Inner Peace Walker. I'm about repairing your self-worth and not just accentuating the positives, letting you craft your path to your inner peace. And from that comes exploring beyond your symptoms, beyond the everyday signals and signs that you see that you get stuck in. We work together to look into root causes and start from there to show your own possibilities. Toxic relationships is a great to cover because it is an area that we probably all struggle or have struggled in previously. And we don't have to just get stuck in the symptoms. We can look beyond and find our own ways forward. So very much looking forward to this discussion.
Yes, absolutely. Love having you here. Thank you so much. All right, Juliana.
Good morning. Great to be with you here. I work with frequency wellness. What's the root of the root of the root? It's energy and frequency. So by shifting that, we can change the outcomes. And that can be identity transformation. That is a huge passion that sometimes we have to transform how we see ourselves to heal.
Yes, so powerful. It's so true. It all goes back into energy and how those energies get trapped in our body. We are energetic beings. That is what we were made of. So powerful. Thank you for that. Thank you for being here. Kate, speaking of energy.
Hello, I'm Kate Simpson. I am an energy healing practitioner, certified in emotion code, body code, and a master practitioner in the global energy method. And yes, everything's energy. Working with so many clients, this topic of toxic relationships really stems from so many different things, from trapped energies and emotions that actually can create little energy walls and trauma walls around the body. And so many of us are affected by these energies that we're not even aware of often. So I'm excited for this discussion to talk a little bit about not only releasing energy, but really the solutions to repattern and really kind of move through these toxic relationships to a brighter future. So excited for this chat today.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here. All right. And we have Tanya.
Hi, I'm Tanya Baldwin from Mind, Body, Spirit, Healthy Self, and I'm a transformation alchemist. And what that means is that I blend a multitude of different modalities and traditional plus spiritual concepts together. I bring over 20 years of nursing plus holistic health stuff, quantum healing, so many different things. I really like to learn all the modalities that I can to support my clients, but my expertise really is in trauma. That's from my own lived experience in the trauma and also in the healing journey. And like I said, this is just beautiful for us to have this panel talking about toxic relationships. Many of us experience those and we're not even aware that that's what we're in. It just becomes our normal. And we'll keep patterning in those normals until we address the root cause and clear the energies and reestablish safety within our nervous system. Because what is familiar is considered to be safe until we determine that that is not actually safe. So I love that we're doing this today.
Absolutely. Me too. It's so important, like you said. And then we have L'Oreal and Arcturus.
Grand Rising, everyone. My name's Arcturus, and this lovely woman next to me is L'Oreal. Together, we offer energy healing to help repair the first relationship that we have, the one between mind, body, and spirit. We were both raised in toxic environments, and as much as we didn't want to be like our parents, we learned to treat ourselves that way. And through the healing, we recognize that the first toxic relationship to heal is that one that we have with ourselves. So we're looking forward to sharing what we've discovered.
Agreed. Amen. All right. L'Oreal, did you want to say something too? Yeah. Okay. And then we have Bonnie.
Good morning, everybody. I am a holistic nutritionist and an herbalist, and my main focus is really helping people tap into nature, tap into the plants that live in our world that can not only help us heal, help us improve our mindset and improve our cravings and our desires for specific foods so that you're no longer fighting your subconscious and your conscious to eat healthy, to be healthy, to actually take those steps to heal that your mind, your body, and your spirit really do need.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that there has been miraculous provisions for us since the beginning of time, the foundations of earth, for us to heal and heal naturally and heal our body. And, really each one of us, that's what we're going to the root to, is that natural core of healing and going back into our roots. So, like I said, I'm so honored to have all of you here. This is such a fantastic group of experts. And I don't want to delay much longer because we have lots of questions that were submitted in, and I would love for you to hear the answers that have been presented. We've been, talking about this in discussions and really working on bringing you the best answers. So what we're going to do in this format is that I'm going to go ahead and present a question, and some questions will be directed towards a certain practitioner. Other questions will just be open, and I'm not really sure if any of you guys have the option to raise a hand. If not, maybe just physically raise your hand. I don't know. I know in our other software that we do normally when we have these events, you have the ability to raise your hand, but maybe not. But we will, we'll try to divvy this up as best as possible, because I really want you to tap into all of these resources. It's such a fantastic group. Okay, so one of the first questions that we received is, what did I do to cause this? And I think that, so many times that's part of the toxic behavior is to think that it's our fault, to go back into it and see, what did I do to cause this? So I would love to open this up, and if anybody would like to address this first, I'll be happy to open it up. Tanya? Okay. Tanya and then Bonnie, okay?
So in the intro that I gave for myself, I spoke about how our nervous system gets created within the environment that we're in, and what is normal to us becomes what we seek out. So many times when we experience trauma as a child, those patterns that we see around us become the patterns that we assume as normal or familiar and safe. So we continue to put ourselves in those positions where in the inside, if we're looking at it in a traditional sense, that we get those chemicals, the chemicals that we became unfortunately addicted to. So we get addicted to a certain level of adrenaline. We get addicted to a certain level of cortisol. So we keep seeking those situations out. And we've also been created to think that the treatments that we saw maybe between, if we had parents who had a toxic relationship where there was abuse or neglect, that's normal. That's the way that women get treated, or that's the way that men get treated, or that's what we should have within our relationship. So when we see those patterns in our own lives, we don't recognize them as being abnormal. They're just our normal. And it's until, even when we're getting elements of the abuse, oftentimes we have been so hurt at a child level that our core wounds are that we're not good enough, that we somehow deserve this. So when it's happening to us as adults, this is just something that we did something wrong. We expect this, we deserve this, but because of the conditioning that we had as children. And even when we think that, in our logic mind, that's not normal, our child mind says it is. And it overrides us because that child mind is the subconscious programming that exists below the surface. So between your chemical makeup, and that's why many people who experience traumatic relationships end up becoming in a childhood trauma between the ages of 0 and 7. They become adrenaline seekers. They do adrenaline seeking activities, or they work in high profile careers like nursing, being on the front in the emerge department, being a firefighter, being a police officer, and those frontline things. We do those because it's a constant run of adrenaline in our system. So it keeps feeding that chemical makeup that we had. Or we'll look for those toxic relationships to keep that going within ourselves, or we create it. We'll seek out drama, or we'll self-sabotage, or we'll do all of these other behaviors because we're really aligning with what we think we deserve. We're looking for the mirror out there that reflects what we feel about ourselves and other people, where we get the chemical reactions that we're looking for and the treatment we think we deserve from the patterning and conditioning that we've had.
Yeah, so true. I don't know how many times I've reflected in my life and just realizing I would hear myself say, "This is normal," only to have those words hanging out there for everybody to see, to recognize this is actually not normal. But I was the last one to see that it wasn't normal. So great word. Okay, Bonnie.
I'm going to start with this because this is one of my favorite phrases to remind people of. Normal is a setting on your washing machine. There is no normal. There is reality, but reality is perception. You know, my reality is what I perceive. My husband's is what he perceives, and the boys are what they perceive. But the only way to get a true reality is to get a full circle impression of it. And that's impossible. It is impossible to figure out what reality is. There's a lot of things that we unknowingly cause, but with a toxic relationship, whether it's food or, you know, someone that you are dating or a friendship or with parents or with siblings, children, those are things that a lot of times you're not causing. There is not something that you caused from a dietary perspective, you know, and illnesses, things like cancer. There are actually genetic components that have happened from generation to generation that will trigger a situation. It's the same thing with everything else. There are things that you perceive as normal within a relationship that actually is very toxic, but because of generations before you, there's no way that you're going to be able to actually actively see that unless you start healing all of the elements of you. And a lot of times that happens because you're trying to figure out what a sugar craving is. And then now you're diving down this deep rabbit hole. And unknowingly, you're actually healing the generational negativity, I guess is the best way to phrase that. But that doesn't mean that you caused anything. A lot of times there's nothing that you physically or intentionally caused. It's just, here's your situation and here's what you perceive as reality. Changing that reality means a significant amount of healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Bashad, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Some awesome points made there. And I think the first thing to say is in the phrasing of the question itself is saying, what did I do to cause this? Which implies that you've not only taken responsibility for what you may your own behaviors and reactions. And as has been pointed out already, as much as we like to think that it is and counterintuitive as it appears, you're only responsible for yourself, not what the other person. It takes practice to learn, because as again, we've been exposed to all sorts of programming experiences that we've picked up since childhood. And it's not to say we're blaming anybody. This is just circumstantial in terms of how we've taken on those experiences to mean something about us and the way we process experiences, emotions. So essentially we have an idea of this is good or accepted behaviors, and these are bad and accepted behaviors, which gives us a general way of going about things. But when it comes to personal situations, we also have a core human need of love and connection and significance and ego to other people. We're talking about people relationships here, and that can extend into things like food, substances, scrolling on your phone, messing about on social media, gaming, all the things that, as was mentioned before, you're trying to get that adrenaline rush to catch that first hit of dopamine that your brain had. But what your brain does is, and this is going slightly off topic, it shuts down those receptors, so you try and go more for more of the same kind of hit. When it comes to relationships, in the original question, when something looks to be perceptibly going wrong, we immediately go, oh crap, I've done something. But the practice here is that we can be kind to ourselves and take our own responsibility, which means just asking ourselves, okay, what can I do in a situation? What questions can I ask? Can I upkeep communication? But also finding our own balance to not just go, right, I'm the one that's going to take responsibility of everything. I'm the one that's going to find all the solutions. It has to be a two-way thing. And yes, it can be difficult, for example, to break from a relationship because we've not thought about it and we're thinking that's. But ultimately, we have our own answers. It's whether we want to find them and accept them. And that can mean going into your dark parts. If you're in a personal relationship, for example, communication might be best. I'll come back to that point of, especially as it's like mental health awareness yourself, because very quickly we can just turn the finger on ourselves and blame, and then sort of amplify those senses of you're not good enough. And that's where low self-worth stems from. It's an expression of it. I'm not good enough. I did something wrong. What did I do? And then we just trying to find those answers. So if you stay kind to yourself, get some practice time, whatever that practice looks like, then you can find your own way forward a little bit more.
Beautiful. So true. So helpful. Thank you, Fashad. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. I'm going to direct this one to Jody first, and then we can go from there. Jody, what would you say is the most impactful red flags to be aware of?
That's a great question because there are so many, and it's honestly going to be very individualized to each situation, to each different type of relationship. What happens is as we are growing up, yes, all of our programming, right? We're wide open. We're like little sponges, especially before age 7 or 8. And we're creating all of these beliefs about ourselves, our situation, the world, how we interact, what relationships are supposed to be, and what those normals are. We're also being programmed to disconnect from ourselves. So I know Vishad earlier was talking about that original connection, right? That mind, body, spirit connection. And we're actually really conditioned to disconnect from that from a very young age and not listen to our own cues internally. When we are going to school and somebody is telling us when we can eat, sleep, use the restroom, get a drink of water, all of these things, and then we have to override when our body says we're hungry, we're thirsty, this and that. We also are taught, unfortunately, in our country, absolutely, and I think in many cultures around the world as well, that we have to give Auntie so-and-so a hug. We don't have a choice over our body, right? That it's like, oh no, go hug your grandma or your grandpa, do this, do that. And we're expected to comply no matter if we feel like it or not. And so unfortunately, what happens is we are conditioned to ignore red flags. And so really one of the core pieces of work when somebody's starting to figure out what are red flags for me is getting back connected with themselves and their autonomy, their choice to be able to recognize first, this doesn't feel right. This is a red flag for me. And then to exercise their will to make a different choice and to step away from that. And so it's really a process of looking at what are the relationships in your life that are toxic, and then going through that process of what are those things now that I'm aware of them? Because we were just talking about how a lot of times you feel like it's your normal. And so you're drawn to those types of relationships, situations. We're not looking at, what are those things in that moment. We just think we did something wrong and we need to make it right, or we need to make the other person happy, or we need to fulfill that need in ourselves, right? If we're thinking we did something wrong or we deserve that. So it's looking at, what are those red flags now that you're aware of this toxic relationship. That awareness is very much that first step. And then looking at what are those for you. And a lot of times it's your gut is going to tell you, your intuition is going to tell you. Once we're aware, then we can start to reconnect and learn what feels similar than it did before. Before it's like a moth to a flame. You're drawn to what felt familiar. Now that you're aware that that relationship was toxic, you can start to look at, okay, what are those cues that feels familiar, but not in a positive way, in that negative way. And Carrie, I saw Carrie nodding, and she has something to talk about, I can tell, about children, right? And about, like not being able to say no to, something that is unwelcome. And I know Bonnie definitely is over there too. So I'm going to pass it off to them.
Thank you, Jody.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I quickly just wanted to, wow, so much about that. And I put in the comments, we actually this year I had to set a big boundary with a family member, and I have a really big family. This person has an issue with my son, who, by the way, is 11 years old. So what's wrong with you? Right? Like, you need to heal your traumatic relationship. But every time we'd go to this person's house, be like, well, you got to hug her. And I'm like, you can be respectful and say hello, but you do not need to touch anybody that you get a weird energy from or you don't like. Like, I feel like when we set our children up for that, we are setting them up for a whole lot of things that can go wrong later in life when we're teaching them not to listen to themselves. And I think it has a lot. I mean, food also plays into it. You know, I talk about food a lot, listening to your gut. But a lot of times we turn that off and we don't listen. So I teach people, mostly women, to get back to listening to their gut and how does this food make you feel? And like Jody said, like, once you know, then you can't unknow. Then you can actually tune into your body for all the toxic relationships. Is this food serving me? Is it making me feel good? Is this other relationship not feeding me? Like, tuning into our gut, even though we've become so disconnected. But once we get back to tuning into that, is like so powerful for healing all relationships.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I love the line, does this serve me? That is something that I've used multiple times in relationships and partnerships, and, you know, creating something together with people, just really looking into it and saying, does this serve me? Does this serve the purpose that, you know, that I originally imagined that it would? And really listening to that, because when we ignore that, we are literally like untraining our mind to listen to our subconscious, and we are doing ourselves a disservice if we are not asking those questions inside of ourselves. Does this serve me? And I think that as a parent, it's so important. I think that there is generational differences in raising children, of course. I know that my parents' generation demanded respect. You know, it was this, you know, it was never something, you know, the respect comes from adoration. I mean, that's what the root of the word is to adore, to respect, revere someone. But we treat it as, you have to respect me. If I say, hug your aunt, go hug your aunt. You're disrespecting me. And so that we're not teaching our children to respect themselves. We're not having respect for our children. When we violate their own personal feelings of discomfort or their own personal red flags, then we are really causing a disservice to our kids. But we look at it because we've been, you know, like I said, we look at it as a trained perspective from our own childhood, as you demand respect, and this is culturally what we're expected to do, or, you know, in our family setting, this is what our family expects us to do. But really, like I said, going back to that root, going back to, does this serve me? Does it serve my child to violate this boundary in him or her? And then really recognizing where we're crossing those lines. So great conversation. I love this. Would anybody like to jump in on that question? Go ahead, Tanya.
So when we're looking at identifying red flags, I remember during my healing journey, I had this eureka moment. And it was a moment where I was like, we absolutely know what is good and what isn't good when it comes to relationships. We just don't align ourselves with that because of what we think we deserve. And for many of us, we hop from one relationship to the next relationship because we can't be alone. For me, that was a pattern that I had, because when I was alone, it was just a big, glaring, obvious, I'm not lovable. I don't have a partner to love me, so I'm clearly unlovable. So I would hop into another relationship to feel that I had some worth or some value, because mine was all external, which many people who have experienced trauma look externally. When we're children, we don't blame we don't look at our parents and say they're bad when something happens. And when they treat us poorly, we think there's something wrong with us, that my parent can't even love me. So then we go and seek out other people who show that to us, that we're not lovable. But we still know what is or isn't toxic or unhealthy behavioral pattern. We know that somebody yelling and screaming and throwing things, that's a toxic relationship, or that that's a red flag that we should be aware of. The problem is until we create safety within our nervous system, we continually seek those things out. And the only way to really create that safety within your nervous system is usually in the absence of the relationship. I used to talk all the time, and I tell my clients, I tell people in the lives that I do, it's really hard to heal in the environment that cut you, right? It's really hard. If I have a cut on my arm, if I keep cutting that open, I'm not going to heal that cut very quickly, if at all, right? I need to remove myself from whatever's cutting me so that that has the time to heal. And the same thing for my nervous system. For me to understand what feels unhealthy, I have to create that healthiness within me. So I have to reestablish safety within my nervous system so that when I'm in an environment that is unsafe, that my nervous system actually gives me the feedback that I'm looking for, that this is not okay. And for with children, when we're growing up, many of us go, I'm not going to be like my parent. That's our first recognition that what happened was not correct or not healthy. So we start to make those changes, but often we don't make enough of the changes, right? We still carry on a lot of patterns or similarities between our parents. I know I did. So that's, that was what I would say, is that we need to remove ourselves from that, but we all ultimately know that's not correct. And if we don't know in ourselves, we've probably talked to our friends, and our friends have been very clear that relationship is no good for you. And then we don't listen to our friend. We just keep going along, right? So anyway, that was just my input on that.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. Okay, so we're going to keep going with the questions because we've got probably 20 questions here. I think we've covered 3. But I'm going to throw out a couple of things here. So I think this one is a great one, and we can kind of expand on it a little bit more. But basically, what can you do to protect yourself? That was one of the questions that comes up. And I would imagine this is kind of all across the board, when you are protecting yourself from a relationship that you're kind of, like I said, you're co-parenting, or, you're in that type of relationship because you have to be. Current employer, there's things that, happen in circumstances that we can't just exit safely. We are committed to that relationship for whatever reason. So in that case, what I would like to do is really just go around for anybody who wants to go to chime in on this one. What are some solutions? Maybe give us a free solution and a service solution that you offer to protect yourself that might help. So, I'll just kind of throwing that out there just as a practitioner standpoint. As a practitioner, what can you do to start shielding that energy, or to start, calming that nervous system to protect yourself? So anybody who wants to chime in, we'll go ahead and start. We'll start with Jody, if you've got one for us.
Yes. For me, the answer is boundaries. So it's learning how to set boundaries, because even in situations, like you said, where perhaps you aren't able in this moment to completely exit that situation, because I do work, like you said, with a lot of people who are co-parenting, or in other situations where they can't break away completely, right? Or it's a close family member. So really setting strong boundaries and limiting interactions or certain conversations or certain situations, and being aware of what those toxic interactions look like, right? And trying to set boundaries around and limit those. And so one of the things that I do with clients is to help teach them, how to reconnect, how to figure out what those boundaries are for them, and then how to clearly communicate that and enforce that. And so, that is something that you can practice on your own, but it's also something you don't have to do alone, that you can absolutely get support around, and to reach out to get that help in how to do that. Because a lot of us, we're not taught, we weren't sat down, growing up and taught, okay, this is how you set a boundary. Like we just were talking about a moment ago, often it was actually the opposite. And we were constantly having to compromise on those boundaries. And so that is something that is a service that I provide as well to help support people in that process.
Beautiful. Kate, did you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I think boundaries is definitely one of the most important things you can do. There's also some things you can do truly with energy and intention, just literally placing an energetic shield around yourself. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And there's many ways. And so it's something that you can do just with intention, that you're just creating a bubble of protection around yourself as you're going into a situation. And then the other thing I would say is to help create a level of safety is doing release work with emotion code, or finding out if you have a trauma wall and helping to release the energies that you probably don't realize are there. Throughout life, we suppress so many different emotions and we bottle things up because we're just getting through what we need to get through. And so as a way to help get your nervous system in a safe place, releasing those emotional energies that you have trapped is a huge part of your healing journey, and replacing that with positive vibrations so that you can move in a place where you get stronger each and every day as you're interacting in those relationships that maybe you can't avoid. So that can be a huge part of the healing journey as well. And that's a service that I offer with emotion code and energy healing release work, is a huge part of creating that strength and that safety. So
Beautiful. And I think it's important to point out too that a lot of those walls are put up to protect ourselves, those energy walls that you're talking about.
yeah.
As a child, but they may no longer serve you. You may be out of those relationships, of those toxic relationships, and on your healing journey, that wall is now preventing you in life from living your fullest. And so that is, an important part of healing and recovery. But also just to recognize it's our own natural system of protection. And I think also just our nervous system is designed to alarm us when we need to flee. I mean, it is there communicating to you. If you are feeling anxiety, that's your body's natural response to say, I think there's a tiger chasing you. I'm going to you enough energy to run like crazy. And so, but we're not listening to that. We're just saying, oh, I have anxiety. You triggered my anxiety. And we're blaming it on this label that we have. But it's really your body is communicating to you. And we really need to go in there and listen to what our body is saying. So great points. I know I'm kind of going off a rabbit trail here, but would anybody else like to chime in on this? L'Oreal and Arcturus? Yes, I was hoping.
Yes, boundaries are important. And I would add that surrounding yourself with people that do have healthy relationships as a model will help you see where your boundaries are way off the mark. And it doesn't take more than what Kate said, setting an intention, asking, knowing that you deserve to have healthy relationships with people, and they will start to show up. We offer calls every week that bring people together that are on a healing journey to create relationships with each other and themselves. And obviously, AHS is an amazing community to form relationships and have those bonds inside a very well maintained community.
And I would like to add to the energy protection. One modality that I received from Source was we were all born with this beautiful tool called the shield of light, which is our breath. As soon as we find ourselves into a conflict, the second we take a breath into our belly, we are saying, I choose my energy. Your energy can stay out. As we do that 2-3 times, by the time we are ready to answer, we are centered, our whole energy has shifted, and we can come from a place of love. We can see them struggling, and we know exactly how to answer to serve ourselves in them. So that's what we always tell our clients. As soon as you find yourself into a conflict, pay attention to your body. Always listen to your body. Your body will tell you exactly where you're holding the trauma. And know that when you have the time after, you will look into that place. You will see and ask, what am I holding on to this? Why am I not feeling safe when I'm walking into a conflict? The next one is claim your space. Feel your space with you. Bring the shield of light. Your breath is light. Your breath is life. When you do that, there is no other room inside of you but you.
Beautiful. Go ahead, Tanya.
I'm so glad that Lorelei mentioned breath. That's exactly where I was going to go. Whether you're looking at it from the energetic aspect or you're looking at it from the nervous system, when we're in fight, flight, freeze, disassociate, we're either in the sympathetic nervous system or we're in the altered state of the parasympathetic nervous system. For us to return to rest and digest, which is the healthy space that we want to be in, we want to apply the brake. And the only brake that we have control over is our breath. Our breath, when we take control of that, we slow it, deepen it, we are able to put the brake on the sympathetic nervous system, bringing ourselves back to center. When we slow and deepen our breath, it lowers our blood pressure, it lowers our heart rate, and it lowers our temperature as well. So all of those things collide and creates that calm within our body. It pushes against the vagus nerve as well. The thing that I like to, besides breath work, is really to tell people, I don't receive this. Whatever you can only control you can't control what anyone external to you is doing. When we're working with people that are narcissistic, it's the gray rock technique, right? So you're not engaging in it. You just become like a stone, unfazed by it. And it's the same concept. It's, I don't receive this. Whatever you're giving me, I don't receive it. And then go to the breath, slow and deepen. I do a lot of work building resiliency toolkits. I have sessions that I do with people just focused on the breath work, grounding, mindfulness, like all the practices. And then I custom build resiliency toolkits with them. And I also do quantum regression and integration therapy, which is where we go into the energetic root cause to remove that from your energetic and bring in better energy within that space. So we could remove low self-worth and bring in confidence and so forth, but putting you into a state where maybe you have the confidence to actually enforce boundaries, because it's typically that's the issue with boundaries, is we don't have the self-worth or the confidence to actually enforce them.
Yeah, so good. So good. Juliana, would you like to touch on this a little bit with energy? I mean, in regards to protecting ourselves with energy.
Yes, I'll try and make it short. I feel like I'm simple or like a child. If I can reduce it down to tapping a button that says shielding and it make a difference in my environment, that works really well for me. I'm so grateful that we can use frequencies to do that. But like the theme here, we can't implement the boundaries or the breathing or whatever until we start to take responsibility for the relationship we have right here and rehab that. And that has to do with an identity shift. And I do encourage you to start like anchoring into that future self. What would she or he do in that same situation? How would they speak up for themselves? What character traits would they do? And you can start to weave those into affirmations on a daily basis. And you want to take it to the next level, say those affirmations, looking yourself in the eye, in the mirror daily, and start to do those gentle subconscious identity shifts to empower yourself to make those practical changes when the heat is on in a relationship.
Absolutely. So important. Yes. And when you say tap a button, you're referring to the AO scan technology, where it is literally going into the energetic field of your biofields and creating that energetic field of protection. So I think it's such a valuable tool and resource to offer people, to help protect that and to really check and if you're in alignment with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this one is going to be directed towards Fashad, and then anybody can jump in and chime in as well. What are healthy ways to process and express anger, resentment, or other difficult emotions stemming from a toxic relationship?
Thanks for asking that, Jamie. I think the first thing to denote here is breaking it down into a very simplistic term of, okay, well, we have the emotion of anger, but what does that actually mean? And we can go a step back further before we answer that question of what is even an emotion. An emotion at its heart is a chemical reaction in our system that will last 90 seconds if we don't apply anything to it, any meaning, any context, and let it pass through and out of our systems. But what's happening at the moment is that we catch the emotion, we trap it, we apply meaning to it, we apply logic, reasoning, and it gets trapped. And until we process it in full, we walk around with physical aches and other symptoms that as a result of unprocessed emotions. So another lesson we can take from that is, and I'll come back to anger in a second, is that it's not the emotion, it's what we feel about the emotion. So a lot of the stuff we've talked about previously is that there are certain aspects or characteristics or behaviors that we display that means that that's not acceptable, that's not good enough. So in the great hugging example that we had, it's like, if you don't hug, then you're not acceptable, because that's the conformed acceptable behavior. And as soon as we show something different, then that goes into the list of like, okay, if I did that again, but without that reassurance, we're going to think, okay, if I did that again, that means I'm going to get told off and therefore I'm not good enough. So it's the same thing with emotions. When we've expressed emotions naturally in our past from no sense of like filtering or behaviors, if you think of children, in your lives, they display emotions straight off the bat. They don't worry who's around them. Is this going to look good or bad or whatever? Whatever they feel, they will let you know in whatever capacity they've got. It's their voice, it's their actions, it's anything. And what we as adults do is that we apply the context going, is that an acceptable thing for people to be seen? Are they being too loud? So what do? You try and pacify the emotion. You tell them to calm down or shush or stop jumping around or whatever it might be. So again, we received that message in to go, right, if you display this behavior or this emotion, that's good, that's acceptable. So I'll file it in the positive emotions bracket, and vice versa for negative. If you display behavior or emotion that's negative or perceived as negative, you put it into your right, I better not display that, because ultimately, if I display that, that means I'm not good enough and they might not look after me and I might die. That's the core root of it all. That's that's essentially where low self-worth comes from. So when it comes to anger and our understanding and processing of emotions, if we take anger in a different way of thinking of, well, anger is actually suppressed overt or covert rage. So overt rage is, if you imagine the Incredible Hulk, goes all mad, smashes up everything, the kind of very loud character. We all have that element to us if we, explode into rage. And then we've got covert rage. So this is things like passive aggressiveness, sarcasm, selfish silences. If somebody asks, are you all right? And you're like, yeah, I'm fine. You get very kind of uptight in that. But where that's come from is the fact that you've felt naturally angry at whatever it might be. But again, it's like, wait, if I display my anger or how I feel at this moment, that's not acceptable, because people are going to think, oh, that's weird, or, she or he went off on one. So we suppress it. And like a water drop into a bucket, it goes in. And that bucket keeps getting filled drop by drop by drop until one day, a tiny innocuous thing comes along that overflows the bucket, one more drop in, and you burst out in rage. So even that understanding of anger being rage can help us go, okay, I can then see if I can process my anger live in healthier ways. And another way we can look at anger is that there's something behind the anger. It's what I call a heating element that's heating up a colder emotion. So a colder emotion might be grief or hurt or shame or embarrassment, which are all natural, healthy emotions, by the way. But we use anger because it's not acceptable in our heads to feel and express that grief or hurt or embarrassment or whatever it might be. So when we add anger into the mix, we can say, oh, I'm really pissed off or I'm really offended. and therefore that's more acceptable. People listen to us more when we say that. So even just practicing those ways of understanding what's behind the anger and the emotion, you can tap into, okay, it's actually the grief that I'm feeling, and then give yourself the message, it's okay to feel like that. A very quick example I'll finish on is that, I don't know if anyone's a fan of The Simpsons here, but I'll use an example from there. But okay, brilliant. Well done, Kerry. So there's an episode where Ned Flanders has his house blown down by a hurricane, and it's the only house in the neighborhood that gets blown down. And he tries to keep his anger in about it all, and then he just bursts out, oh, diddly, you're all rubbish. You can't rebuild my house. And then everyone's shocked because that's not him. He's usually sort of friendly and takes everything in stride. But what you learn in the episode ultimately is that he went through corrective therapy to correct his wayward behavior, but it was corrected so much that he now can't display any of his behavior. He's been taught himself to suppress it all down, but he couldn't suppress it any longer, which meant he just burst out in front of everybody. And when you go back even further, the root cause behind that was he blamed his parents for the lack of discipline that they gave him. Now, this is not all about a blame exercise. This is all about understanding what's beneath something. So it gives you an idea of, okay, what can I actually feel and process here? So next time you're angry, for example, you can take a moment to identify what you actually feeling. Are you feeling hurt? Is there grief? Is there sadness? Is there nervousness? And then another question is, are you suppressing that? And then you can find ways. There's all sorts of ways. Everybody on here has got brilliant ways of, we've spoken about emotion code and breath work, and brilliant ways to regulate and express your emotions in a healthier way, which actually raises your self-worth little by little, which allows you to process these emotions that stem from the difficult relationship. I know I went off on one, but I hope that made a little bit of sense.
Yes, beautiful. Beautiful. Would anybody else like to chime in on the question, or maybe I need to ask the question again? Okay, Todd, go ahead.
So I was just typing it out, actually. There's no good or bad emotions. It's our reaction. So it's the way that we react because of our emotions that really gets us into trouble. So when we understand that it's not the emotion itself that is the issue, it's how we explode, in the sense of, we're blowing up the balloon over and over and over again. And sometimes we go and we vent it off, and it's like, whee, and we let out some of the air, and then we go blow more into it, and eventually the balloon pops because we don't vent it off. We're stacking our emotions too. So we go back to the point in time where we were first injured. So if we were made to feel rejected as a 3-year-old, and then we feel rejected as a 33-year-old, we're all of a sudden a 3-year-old. And maybe as a 3-year-old, we threw a temper tantrum and we threw our arms and flailed around. And now we're 33, throwing our arms and flailing around because we're back to that 3-year-old state. So it's not but once we put a light on it and we can validate the experience. So it's actually, I talk to my clients about feel it, deal with it, to heal it, right? You have to feel it to deal with it. So what is the emotion? Validating that. I'm validating the fact that I'm having this emotion and it's absolutely okay. There are no bad emotions. This emotion is okay. And then asking yourself, what can I do for you in this moment? How can I help you in this moment? Because once we put a light on it, and this is from Gabor Mate in Compassionate Inquiry, when we start to put a light on it, it reduces the effect of it, or the feeling of it. It feels really big, but once we shine a light on it, it actually makes it smaller. So the other part is when we're looking at dealing with it. So what can I do, right? How can I help myself through this experience? Allowing yourself the opportunity to feel it. Sometimes we go through the experience of, oh, no, I'm just going to move from one state to the other. So before maybe I was suppressing it. Now I'm going to say that it's okay, but I'm going to go straight into soothing it. Well, you're still bypassing the emotion. You're not allowing yourself the freedom to feel it. So with anger's energy, like it's all energy in motion. And anger is one of those energies that really likes to be expressed through motion. So go outside and stomp it in the ground. Go into a space where you're able to and yell. Just allow it to come out in that energetic expression, where you're not yelling at someone, you're just allowing the energy to process through your body. Journaling, working out, they're really great ways to process energy, like the energy of anger through your body. When we're looking at crying, many of us were suppressed with crying, right? I grew up in an age of, are you crying? Do you want me to give you something to cry about? So it was, I'm going to cry, I'm going to get pain, and I'm going to end up really, really crying. So we just shut it down. But it's just allowing yourself, I can cry as long as I need to. There's nothing wrong with crying. It's a valid emotion. I wouldn't have tear ducts if I wasn't meant to cry. And just giving yourself the opportunity and freedom to do that. Having some, a social network that you can rely on to get support from, where you can, if you needed to cry or you needed a shoulder, that you had those valid people there. But journaling, movement, we used to have wailing circles, or men would go out and cut some wood, right, to exhaust that energy out of their bodies. But those are healthy ways to express the emotion or to move the energy through your body. And then once you've gotten the energy out of your body, which I'd give yourself about 30 minutes, right, between the energy coming in, the feeling it, then dealing with it, and then soothing the emotion before you return back to the situation and try to have a conversation where you're then responding to what came up.
Yeah, beautiful. I know even in a quantum healing aspect, one technique is to literally go outside and ground yourself, putting your bare feet on the ground and telling your body, these are not your emotions. You can release them. And telling your body to release those emotions into the earth. And that is such a powerful, easy technique. I think it's also a tool for children to use. I have a couple of child clients that we use this technique with them, especially when you're dealing with a child who's an empath. And I don't know why, but when there's relationships, it seems like when there's a toxic relationship or a narcissistic relationship, a lot of times there's empaths all around that narcissist. And so especially when people are dealing with, as an empath, of taking on the emotions of that other person, that other toxic person, literally just the exercise of saying, this is not my emotion, or it no longer serves me, and releasing it into the earth. It's so powerful, and it literally just feels like you've just been unplugged from that energy. So such a great tool and resource to use. Did anybody else want to jump in? Bonnie, you can say it. So just so you guys know, in the chat here, only we are able to see this in the chat. So if you want to chime in for something, you can go ahead and just say it.
So I was actually suggesting swamping, which is something that the woman's name is Mama Gina, and what she promotes is this concept of swamping. And what you do is you set aside a certain time, and it specifically helps those of us who are struggling with the whole suck it all in, suck it up, buttercup, we got other things to do. That only works so long before your brain and your subconscious decide you're in a place now to deal with whatever it is you're not dealing with. And that never happens in a very convenient time. It will happen when you're standing in a line at a grocery store, or you've got kids melting down in a shopping center and you've got to deal with them and their emotions, but now yours are overly taking over the moment. So what swamping is you actually set aside a set time frame, and during that time frame, you do whatever it is will help you release those emotions. Playing music, dancing, shaking, looking like a crazy person, running around the room, screaming, shouting, and even if you're in an apartment and you have to scream into a pillow, whatever your brain and body needs, that's what's released. And at the end, you need to make sure to take 5 minutes to recenter yourself. So nice, deep, slow breaths, play your meditation, play whatever. I know AOScan uses the mind sync. You can use the inner voice. You could just play some meditative music, but somehow, some way, that last 5 minutes after that full release, you need to come back to a peace and balance. You don't walk away from your session with all that emotion just released. You don't complete that circle. And it allows you to release at least a significant portion of what you're holding into. And for some of us who are very, very stubborn, it can take a few sessions. But when you are diligent about it, when you're purposeful about it and mindful, it can really help you deal with the things that feel like they are overwhelming you and causing more stress than you really need to worry about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'll just add to that. You mentioned one of my favorite things, Bonnie, inner voice. I, again, love simplicity. As was said earlier, we have ways of still being in that child mode years later, or reacting from this place of wounding. And our voice carries that, like the scars through our life. The frequencies in the voice can be analyzed, and then we can create sound therapy that's uniquely made for our brain and body to balance. So in the last week, I've seen a few people break down in tears. All they're doing is listening to music, and now their body, their nervous system is shifting into that place of peace, and it's just naturally releasing those emotions from music. And it took 10 seconds to record their voice. I love things that can be like autopilot, and that's my favorite way right now to release old trapped emotions and some trauma patterns, because that's moving out of the body. Do I need to know what emotion, when it happened, all those details? In this case, no. I just love the simplicity, even for a child with autism or a 90-year-old with dementia, listening to the music, body's processing and letting go. I love that. It's so good.
Yeah, I love it too. It is so amazing, the technology now that we have, and it needs to be out there more. People need to know more about it. Well, we're on the hour, just a little shortly after the hour. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit again about our event that we have coming up. And each one of these practitioners are going to be there at this event. One second. Each one of these practitioners are going to be there at this event, basically, there to support you. You're going to be able to schedule meetings with them throughout the day if you would like. And they will just basically, they're not going to be speakers at this event. We're actually going to be supporting Dr. Jamie and his network of TAR Network and several other organizations. We have CPTSD, we have we're representing like 5 different organizations here, and I don't have the list in front of me, but all phenomenal presenters, and they're all going to be speaking on some form of healing of toxic relationships. So because you're watching, because you're a part of our organization, because you're part of our listeners and everything else, you have access to this event for free at no cost. They do take a suggested donation of $20. All of those funds go back into their organization to help people who are in toxic relationships. So you can scan that QR code. I think my banner here is hiding that. So let me hide that for a second. There's the link to it as well, bit.ly Scars to Stars. So you can go on there and register there, or you scan this QR code, take a screenshot with your phone if you're watching on your phone, and get a ticket there, or message us so you know where to find us, and just a message and ask how to be a part of this network. This is going to be a fantastic event. It's really going to tie a big beautiful bow on the end of the night of our or at the end of the month for Mental Health Awareness Month. And so this is super important, and there's a lot that is going into this event that I think is going to bring so much value to you. So again, that's May 31st at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and it will go throughout the day. I think it's about a 5-hour long, but you're welcome to come in anytime and participate. Like I said, our practitioners will be there in the speed networking rooms, and you're able to schedule calls with them as well. And they'll have vendor booths. So, you'll see each one of our practitioners here, their vendor booths will be up at this event, and you'll be able to access more information on what they do and what the services they provide, especially after going through and really identifying toxic relationships. So we encourage you to go join this. If you're not familiar with Dr. Jamie, he has been around for decades in the industry. He's a clinical psychologist and runs this TAR network organization. And he's such a super passionate guy about parental alienation and toxic relationships, narcissistic abuse, narcissism in the workplace, narcissism in the military, for military wives. There's so many areas that he is an expert in. And so he has gathered together a collective of his colleagues that are also subject matter experts. So this is going to be a great collective offering that we're all going to be able to come together and present for you guys. So back to our questions now. I have one. Let's talk about like toxic addictions, because I think that's one of the things that we don't really think about, but it does truly go back to our relationships with ourselves. And that is the big key here, is that when we have toxic relationship with ourselves, then we are not aware, we're avoiding this underlying root cause, or this underlying I guess root cause is the best way of saying it, but we're avoiding that healing. So there's toxic relationships with food, with alcohol, even in, you can be a toxic extrovert where you have to have people around you. That was something that was in me, that it was, I had to have constant stimulation from friends and people, and just constantly avoiding the silence, avoiding time with myself, and not seeing that I had that. And then, of course, when I was by myself, it went to my toxic relationship with food of, okay, now I'm going to soothe with these, death by chocolate brownies. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that really quick. So we got a couple of questions here. What are some common signs that someone has a toxic relationship with food, and how can they begin to recognize these patterns in themselves?
Bonnie, do you want to go first? No? Okay. I think emotional eating, right? Like if you are binge eating, no judgment on that, right, Jamie? Like I have soothed on a Friday night by myself in my apartment with wine and a bag of gourmet jelly beans. Like, like I know it. Okay. So there's no judgment here. But binge eating, right? Just overeating and then feeling like garbage, not only physically, but emotionally, right? I knew I shouldn't have eaten that. I just feel terrible. Like there's something else that's going on that we have to figure out what that is, which is uncomfortable. But at the very least, like we've talked about boundaries, but at the very least, just some self-care, right? Just some breathing, just some journaling, just feeling like you're making yourself a priority and taking care of yourself. I deal with a lot of women and moms, and they're super duper busy, right? But like, what if you could take 10 minutes for yourself, and a list of things that make you feel like a priority, which sometimes they're like, feels disconnected, but it's not. If you're taking care of yourself daily, a little bit of self-care, you aren't reaching for the brownies or the jelly beans as much as you would. Right, Bonnie? I'd love to hear what you think about that.
That's exactly right. One of the things that I teach my clients is when you're fueling your body in certain ways, you actually are playing kind of mind games with yourself. You're fueling your subconscious and sending signals to your subconscious with the food that you choose. So in those moments where you would normally binge or not binge, you have fueled your body in a way that your subconscious doesn't even want to go there, or it's limiting the amount of time you're spending there, which ultimately means it limits the amount of food that you're consuming that really is more harmful than helpful. And I mean, I don't think anybody has any way to judge. My go-to is ice cream, and I have a dairy allergy. So like the ice cream that is available to me right now is probably the worst ingredients on the market. Ooh, okay, yeah, we got like we have lovely storms around here. I don't know if you guys caught that lightning. But things where you know that you're binging and you're trying to pull that back. And addictive personality or addiction in general is really tapping into the pleasure centers. And the more you tap into it, the more your body wants to reach higher and higher mountains. And, it's not going to dip into the valleys. I always tell people we have this balancing line. When you have a little bit of something that indulges, you're going to drop just as far, and it just keeps getting greater and greater. And you can use it to your advantage. You can switch that. You have to consciously switch it and mindfully switch it, but you can. And it's entirely possible. Bashad, I see you over there. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Molly. I just reminded of a term I recently heard called urge surfing. It was who's ill now? It was a neurologist online who was talking about the concept, and it came to the idea of your subconscious has got, amongst other things, two kind of directives. It wants to learn and do something new. So whether that's a new experience, a new skill, or whatever it might be, and also it builds its own tolerance to whatever it is you're doing. So in the case of addictions, is I mentioned it before, where the initial taking of something, whatever it might be, food, social media, a behavior, it gives you such a dopamine rush that is like, right, I want to recreate that again and again because it was so significant. But what your brain does, it builds in resistances to dopamine receptors so that you don't get overwhelmed, because your brain is going, okay, it's nice, but you don't need to go overboard with it. But because you've got that drive to go, no, I want to recreate that drive, it still floods your brain and system with dopamine. So you've got this kind of neurological battle going on, if you will. And where he talked about urge surfing is that readily we have an urge to do something else while we're in the middle of something. So if we're struggling with an addiction, say to food or media consumption, it'd be like we could be reading a book or doing something else, actively going, right, I'm gonna not give into this, I'm gonna make sure I don't eat that chocolate or do whatever. And then your brain's like, oh, go on, one more won't hurt, and it'll be fine, and we'll start tomorrow. It's your brain going, I want to do something new, I'm bored of what you're doing, and I want you to do something new. But at the same time, you're trying to go, no, that's not good for me. So what he talked about urge surfing was that we feel that urge rising to go, if we keep resisting, then your brain's like, right, if you don't do this, I'm going to, make you suffer. So if you've not had, say, chocolate or whatever for ages, you might feel a bit withdrawn. You might get stomach cramp or whatever, and you feel agitated and, those kind of symptoms. So he said, again, this is all about practice. You're not going to get it instantly overnight. If you can feel that urge peaking and then ride it out by basically, and this is the counterintuitive part of it, saying get the brain or subconscious to get bored of being bored, because it's not actually the substance that's driving the addiction, it's the behavior underneath it, because your brain's like, right, do something else, now do something else, now do something else all the time, and it defaults back to the behavior that you know already. So the way he put it together was, his video was about 20 minutes long, and he said at the beginning, track yourself through the video. If you feel like pausing it or opening a new tab or going away and doing something, try and hold on to the end of the video. And at the end, he was saying, if you manage to get here, then you've basically applied the example, the principle in the video itself of urge surfing. You wanted to do something else, but because your brain's like, right, you're not actually going to do this, so I'm getting bored of getting bored, so I'll just default back to what you were doing. And again, it's all about practice, and it's all about understanding that it's not necessarily, the addiction is essentially the wider symptom, but underneath is a drive to do something. When you address the drive, that's when you raise yourself first, so that actually you don't partake in the addiction as a natural byproduct of the work that you do. Because people are always fixated on, all right, I've got to stop doing this behavior, and that's what I'll concentrate on. That's great, it's a good start, but when you repair your self-worth in that manner, by being kind to yourself, by practicing, by taking in all the techniques and understanding, and still making mistakes, because you're not going to get this right all the time, even building that into the process, it means you raise your self-worth bit little by little, and then you find, oh, hang on, I don't need to run to the gourmet jelly beans or the wine or the chocolate or the cake or whatever it might be. And then you just build yourself forward that way.
Beautiful. I was wondering if you guys were going to chime in on this one.
I was going to bring back what Tanya brought up earlier, that the question was, how do I know I have an imbalance with food? When you can accept that, the question then becomes, why am I choosing to ignore it?
Mhm. Yep.
And disease comes from dis-ease. And no matter how much we switch from one habit to the other, we're just going to be caught into the same circle again and again. And it starts with the relationship we have with ourselves. Like turning our head from the root cause, the emotional root, and the limiting belief behind it, right? Because emotions are driven by limiting beliefs. What do I believe about myself every time I eat? What do I believe about myself every time I do something I know it's not good for me? Why am I doing it? Where is this coming from? When did it start? Changing our relationship with food, with anyone around, starts with changing the relationship with ourselves. And we do have a history. We both grew up with narcissistic parents and had a long history of narcissistic and healthy toxic relationships in our lives because of that. And the only way, no matter how many diets, no matter what we try, no matter how many techniques, until we went into the root cause, into what was under the hood hiding, until we learned how our mind were wired. What emotions were we holding? Where were we holding them in our body? Nothing changed. That's when the change happened, when we addressed the beginning of where it started. And it takes courage to go there and face it. It's not always, it usually, our mind makes it scarier than it is. But it requires tapping into that baggage, that balloon, and allowing it to just deflate completely and replace it with what we desire and rewire our brain to continue with the truth.
I feel the most important thing to look out for is, are you just displacing your addiction? AA has like a 4 to 8% success rate, but a lot of people actually get sober and stay that way, but AA becomes the addiction. And they are very toxic people. It makes it difficult for new people walking in there to even want to go into something like that because you're surrounded by all these completely addicted people. That's just not to alcohol anymore. It's to the book. And I see that in spirituality circles. They talk about it, but they're not actually doing anything about it.
We are the technology. We are the most precious technology. Aligning our body with our mind just opens the soul to come in.
Beautiful. So powerful. Guys, we are 10 minutes till stop time. So I wanted to just, excuse me, I got a bit of a cough here. I wanted to take this moment to just really, first of all, thank you all for being here and sharing your expertise and your being vulnerable with our audience. And, and really thank you for investing in yourselves so that you can help so many others. It's such a powerful thing when you start to see the fruit of investing in your own life and how that starts to impact others in so many different ways. So I honor you. I respect you. I appreciate you. And I value you so much for your expertise and your time here today. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and go around the room, the virtual room, and let you guys give a closing statement. Just of, we didn't get to all 20 questions, but that's okay. This is a great topic. And again, we'll be able to address more of those questions on the 31st and really dive deeper into these topics as well. But as we go around the room, I just want to, let you guys have the opportunity to close us out with, a final word of advice and final encouragement, and also include a way to reach out to you personally. Carrie, would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was amazing, and hearing all your perspectives. You're all so great. It's so wonderful to be part of this group. So thank you so much for sharing. And I love what Arturus and L'Oreal said at the end of just being curious as to where things are coming from. Love it. Anyway, yeah, so thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Carrie Paglarini, aka the Sugar Knockout Coach. You can find me on Instagram, sugar_KO_coach. If you have any questions or any of this resonated with you, I'd just love to hear like where you are in your journey. And don't be embarrassed to share any binging stuff, because like I said, totally been there. No judgment. Thanks.
Thanks, Carrie. Jody?
I agree. This has been such an amazing conversation, and it's such a big topic, and there's so much more that we can discuss. And so I'm looking forward to this next event where you're going to have the opportunity to ask those questions and to learn so much more. And for me, it all comes down to figuring out that root cause of not focusing on the effect, but focusing really on what's going on inside. I think it was so important what everyone was sharing about the fact that it's not about that relationship, or it's not about that substance or that food, right? It's about what's happening inside of us that is causing us to then cope, right? And it's those habits and those patterns that we form that are changeable. So there is definitely help, and there is hope, and there is a light to figure out what is going on for you. That awareness is the first step, and then you can make those changes. And there's so much support here. There's so much wealth of a resource here in this community. So this is absolutely the best place to be, to surround yourself with people who are moving through and moving forward from these types of relationships. I'm Jody Solberg. You can find me at Psyched Up Success. You can find me on my website, psychedupsuccess.com, or Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all the places at Psyched Up Success. Looking forward to helping you support and serve yourself in your healing journey. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here. All right, Bashad?
Well, they do say time flies when you're having fun, and this 90 minutes has gone so by, and there's so much value here from all these brilliant people. Well, we'll say to the audience watching, by you watching this is your first step towards repairing your self-worth, and look, any one of these people on board will be a great help to you in your journey wherever you are. I myself am, as I mentioned, Inner Peace Walker. So innerpeacewalker.com/links is where you find all my social media channels, podcasts, books, all that stuff going on. And a last little message is stay kind to yourself. This thing isn't meant to be fixed overnight. It's not meant to be fixed straight away, and you will continue to make mistakes. That's not to say you're going to be stuck in your patterns and things forever, but while we're all trying to work our way forwards and out, we all have signals and clues. And L'Oreal mentioned a great word of courage. It is work that requires a little bit of courage to get on with. And it's not to say that if you've not got courage now that you're a coward, that's okay. You can work yourself up gently by asking questions of situations, whatever toxic relationship means to you. But as I say, stay kind to yourself. You can create your past, your inner peace. It's possible from anywhere. I'm all about pick anywhere you want to start from in life, and we'll work the way through to creating your inner peace.
Thank you so much. Juliana?
And I just want to remind you that there's no substitute for stillness. That this relationship with ourselves, so many things we've talked about here, take us getting off of consuming. Right now you're receiving. That's great. You could immediately get off this and go right here and consume. But I want to encourage you to be still, even just after this conversation. What resonated with you? If there was someone that you felt connected to, reach out and keep doing that. We have to reflect and be like, what was the right best next step? And then make that connection and follow through is my encouragement for you. And my name's Juliana. You can find me on just about every platform as Revelation Navigation, YouTube, Instagram, all those fun things. And my passion is to help people get started with frequency medicine at the touch of a button to help yourself, your family, and your community heal.
Beautiful. I love it. Kate.
Just thank you for being part of this discussion, for showing up today. Reaching out and just learning more is a huge step in healing. And so, yeah, I echo what Julianne says, is just take that stillness and then also then choose which action to take. Reach out to someone. There's an incredible community with alternative healthcare solutions. We have that event at the end of the month. Find a way to just move forward and know that how you feel now is an emotion that'll last about 90 seconds. And so we can get you to feeling better. And I'm with Rebalance with Kate. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and my website is Rebalance with Kate. And just be encouraged that where you are now is only where you are in the present, and that we can move to a new place in the future.
Beautiful. Thanks for being here, Kate.
Hi, I'm Tanya Baldwin. You can find me at mindbodyspirithealthyself.com. All my social links are on my webpage, so you can find me everywhere that I am. I just really wanted to, addictions can be in many, many forms. Some of them are socially acceptable and some of them are not. But addictions is really just our way of coping with pain that we're not willing to face head on. So we're substituting it with something that distracts us from what we need to heal within. There's many ways that we can get to the root cause. There's many different ways that we can heal. It is a journey. Be kind and be compassionate with yourself and just take it one day at a time. But recognize that, there's a lot of foods out there that are packaged as healthy that are not healthy at all. There's lots of things that were shown in social media and in TV programming about relationships, which are dysfunctional dynamics, but it's made it to seem like that's the normal so that you're okay with it. We are fed fear on a constant basis. And really, when we turn off the TV and when we disconnect from the consumption of everything, right, and we go back to just the basics and to the holistic health practices that have been there forever, we really align ourselves back to health. So love you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. L'Oreal and Arcturus?
Yeah, thank you all for watching. And the one thing I would love for you to take home is that you deserve healthy relationships. Regardless of the past experiences and what you believe about yourself, you deserve to have healthy relationships.
And you can heal all disease. You have the power to change everything around. And if you're ready to look under the hood and start rewiring, reprogramming, and clearing, and discovering your true gifts that you came here to bring into the world, we are here. You can find us at l'orealandarcturus.com. And look at all this beautiful community between food and emotions and mental rewiring. You have it all. We're all here for you. And we are grateful and blessed to serve you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And Bonnie.
Okay, so if you've made it this far, you can find me at Wild Free Health everywhere. .com is the website, .app is the community. And my final thought is going to be this for you, is you've heard a lot today. Something usually comes back to you time and time again. So if you're not remembering who said it, who you should connect to, make sure to come back to the YouTube channel. Make sure to come back to the Facebook channel where this is streaming, where you're watching. It will live here when we are done. And you will always be able to come back and either hear the nugget again or be able to connect and remember the person that gave you that nugget. If you do remember those nuggets and you connect with that person, there's a reason. Like L'Oreal and Arcturus said, you can always heal dis-ease. There is potential in each and every one of us. We are phenomenal creatures. And if you haven't seen your potential yet, and you've made it this far in our talk, then come reach out. We are all over at Alternative Healthcare Solutions. Take some time today, take some breathing after this, and just settle in and make your next step a healthier one.
Amen. So good. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for speaking your heart, everyone. It's like, again, it's such an honor to hold this space for you all. So again, May 31st, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We would love to have you. We would love to further encourage you, further support you, further give you tools and resources to continue on your healing journey. So if you'd like access to that event, message us below and connect with us in any Alternative Healthcare Solutions. We give you several ways to connect with us, and we will get you into that event at no cost. So thank you so much for being here and for tuning in, guys. Thank you. Have a blessed day.